Greetings and welcome to Rice Crypto. I'm your host, Rice, and on today's show, I am joined by Janice McAfee, the widow of the late, great John McAfee. And this is her fourth appearance on the channel. I will include links down below in the video description and the pinned comment with both her and John's previous appearances. It's been 2.5 years since John's passed away, and his body has finally been released. I invited Janice on so that we could talk about that and much more. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show as a returning guest, I am joined by the widow of the late John McAfee, Miss Janice McAfee, joining me for the fourth appearance. I will have a link down below in the video description for all the interviews that I did, not only with John, but also with Janice and everything related to John McAfee and his legendary story. Janice, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me back.
Well, I appreciate it. And I know that today is going to be a very interesting conversation because it took place on December 14th, 2023. John's body was officially released. And if I understand it correctly from a video that you posted on X, that he was cremated on the 15th of December. And that was per his wishes. Did I get that right?
Yes, he was cremated. That's what he wanted. So yes.
Okay. And so what I'm going to do real quick, I want to have a screen share. This is the playlist with all of the McAfee related interviews and conversations. And then here is the X account. This particular update from Spain came out January 5th. We're recording this on February the 10th. So this has been about a little over a month ago. What I'm going to do at this point in the video, in the edit, is I'm going to take that clip and I'm going to play it so people who haven't seen it can understand a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So right here during the editing process is where I will put in that clip.
I wanted to give an update on the status of things here in Spain. And so John's body, I was able to finally have his body released to me and was able to have him cremated. That happened in the middle of December 15th to be exact. During the process of making the arrangements to have his body cremated, I found out some additional information that's only raised more questions. And that information is that for the first 6 months of his body being in the custody of the Anatomical in Barcelona, they kept him only in a refrigerated state, thereby completely destroying any opportunity for an independent autopsy. It was also for the first 8 months of them having custody of his body, so the first 8 months after he died, that the prison had an open investigation into his death. So there was no possibility for me to even try to get an independent autopsy. But the fact that they kept him in only a refrigerated state for the first 6 months, means that obviously it completely destroyed any opportunity for an independent autopsy to understand what happened to John. And you couple that with the refusal to give me their autopsy report, it's very difficult to not draw certain conclusions about what has happened here with John and since his death. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with everyone, that yes, I was able to get custody of his body, and his body has since been cremated. I thought that I would feel some sort of relief or some sense of closure, but instead I feel anger bordering on rage, because
again, John's body was released on the 14th of December, cremated on the 15th. So we finally have had his body released. You mentioned during the arrangements for the cremation that you found out some additional information that basically raised even more questions than you had before. Can you expound upon that?
Yeah, so I was just told, because I was speaking to a woman that was with the funeral home, and I was asking if it would be possible for me to see him, because obviously his body being there, I thought maybe they would give me that opportunity, because it wasn't going to happen with the, I'm sorry, the morgue. I can't think of the name that they call it here, but it basically their morgue, where his body had been held this entire time. They weren't going to let me do that at all. So I thought maybe I might have a chance if I go to the funeral home. And so she or they, a representative contacted the mortuary or the morgue where John's body was and spoke with him. And they basically were told that the reason why they wouldn't let me see him was because his body had decomposed so much that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to be able to see him. And so naturally I asked her, well, how is that possible? Because he's been, in a frozen, from what I understand, and which was also a part of the process. They needed 2 days to thaw his body out so that he could be cremated. So that was, the reason why I was asking, in that time while thawing him out. Okay, well then, I should be able to see him, no problem. But anyway, she said his body had decomposed too much, and that how that happened was because they hadn't put him in the freezer for 6 months. So for the 6 months, the first 6 months after he died, he was just in a regular, I don't know, refrigerated state, I guess is what, I don't know what the process is or how they normally store bodies, but
Right.
he wasn't in a frozen state. So whatever that state is prior to that, that's what he was in for 6 months. And so, so I guess, I don't know much about this process, but I guess his body would have decomposed quite a bit, I'm assuming. And to me, I think I mentioned this in the video, but to me, it just, not only did it raise more questions, but it just, honestly, it just made me feel like that there was some intentionality here, because during this 6 months when he was not frozen, I didn't have control over this situation. It was the reason why his body was even being held during that time was because the prison had opened an investigation into his death. So they knew, like, they were the ones holding his body.
Right.
So I don't know why they didn't put his body in the state, in the proper state that it should have been in the first place, because there's an investigation happening and you have to preserve the evidence. So why not properly store the body if you're conducting an investigation? And their investigation actually went on for 8 months before they decided that they were going to close the case and then release, make his body available for release. And so it's just hard to not feel like these things were not intentionally done. Again, I have my own theories about what has happened that I'm just not ready to get into. I feel like once I'm safely out of Spain, then maybe I will share more things. But right now, just looking at the things that I have to look at, everything's just adding up that this was an intentional sort of cover up. That they intentionally tried to do everything to block and keep me from finding out certain information.
Well, what I will say is, without really kind of repeating a lot of what we talked about in the first 3 times you've been on the channel, I really encourage people, if they have not seen those previous conversations, to watch those to catch up. Because, yeah, like you said, I mean, it does raise more questions because I mean, for one, they were listing it as a suicide before they had an official autopsy. And based off of like the information that me and you had talked about, when John was found, he wasn't exactly dead. There was some complications that happened, and then it looked like they tried to resuscitate him. So that would, as I've mentioned in previous conversations with you, that would have been complications due to an attempted suicide or something to that effect. But putting out that he was that it was suicide and not having an official autopsy, and then seeing what's taken place afterwards, because it took several years for John's body to get released, for one. I mean, that was already kind of questionable in and of itself. But I mean, so we're going on a situation where the Spanish jail, the morgue, the official autopsy that hasn't officially been released is all stating that John committed suicide. But John said he wouldn't commit suicide. And then when his body is finally released, and this is to catch people up, it looked like there was some foul play in trying to keep his body stored the correct way. How was his body stored after the first 6 or 8 months?
He was then frozen. So
Okay.
he was, you know, so that's, I'm assuming still at the same facility, but just in a different area, I guess.
And something I had asked you about before we started recording was I was looking up articles because I like to screen share things and let people be able to read information at their own leisure. I didn't see any press on this. There was plenty of press about John's body not being released, John committing suicide, and all these kind of things, but I didn't see anything about finally seeing a release. You had told me you hadn't done any press, any sort of interviews, but you did say that you've seen news coverage in Spain, but for whatever reason, we're not seeing it here in America. I find that to be a travesty in and of itself, as much as they wanted to cover the sensationalism from the story. I think it's very sad that, but our media doesn't have a lot of respect these days, which is, very unfortunate. But keeping it in that refrigerated state for the first 6 to 8 months could have essentially degraded the condition of John's body, which ultimately led you to the conclusion that it destroyed any opportunity for an independent autopsy.
Well, how could it not?
So,
Like how could it have not destroyed that opportunity? I mean, yeah, I could have, if someone would have been willing to give me 30,000 euro to get the autopsy done, I could have wasted that money, because it definitely would have been a waste, because what could have they have told me that I don't already know? I already know what happened to him. I know that from their investigative report. They put it in the report that they performed CPR on him with a noose still tied around his neck. And I don't care
yeah,
how people try to convince me that that's normal. That's not normal. If you're trying to save someone's life, you do not perform CPR on them with a noose around their neck. However, if you're trying to end their life, then maybe you might do that. And so that's where we are. I didn't need an autopsy to, well, obviously I wanted it, but without that, I still know what happened to him.
Well, it sounds like it would. I mean, in all honesty, based off of what you're saying, it sounds like it really would have been a waste of resources and funds, because if there was that much degradation, it was done like that on purpose, in my opinion, because without knowing any more information and speculating, because someone who does forensic science or investigation should understand that at the post-mortem time period, like fresh after someone passes away, like that time period is a very important period, because that's when you can have degradation. So that's when you should be storing the body properly. So the body's not being stored properly. And then, like you said, it raises so many more questions just based off the fact that, and even Wikipedia, which seemed to have something right with even being able to report that what happened on December 14th, talking about the conspiracy theory of the possibility that he was murdered because John made a Twitter post that read, "If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked." McAfee's death drew comparisons to the circumstances of someone else who was in prison who supposedly hung himself as well. So yeah, there's a lot of questions. And one thing I will say is I'm looking forward to you being able to get your ass out of Spain so that we could get together in person and have a conversation and speak a lot more freely about what you think transgressed and took place. But I completely understand that while you're in Spain, you want to make sure that you remain safe. So you always have that open invitation. And, I want to extend that to you.
Thank you.
What's the next thing that's going to happen here? You had talked about some sort of celebration of John's life, closure for his fans and followers and flock. Um, is that still something that's being planned?
Um,
I don't know what
yeah.
else to call it. I mean, the group of whales and the humans that adore John.
Yeah, I want to have a celebration of his life. Obviously, once I'm back in America, that would be that's going to be one of the first things that will happen. When it will happen, I'm not sure exactly when I would like for it to happen. But definitely there will be notice, and it will be as big a bash as I can afford, right? Because he deserves to be sent off properly. And I think for all of the people that loved him, it will be closure for them as well, you know, because just having to take my word for it as of what is happening here obviously would be difficult for some people. And then obviously because who John was, naturally, it's natural that people would say, no, he faked his death. That is a natural conclusion that people would come to. I understand that 1000%. So in lieu of having me give all of this information, which I just didn't feel would be safe for me to do, and then not having the body and all of that. So everybody's been kind of on edge here, trying to figure out, well, is he dead? What's happening and everything else. So I want to be able to provide that closure for all of the people that love John, so that we can celebrate him together and give him a proper send off. Yeah.
No, that sounds great. I was actually just thinking like there's a Bitcoin and Litecoin conference taking place, I think the end of July in Nashville. I don't know if you want to wait that long.
I don't know. I don't know, because honestly, I was thinking about having it in Miami just because that's where we met, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it works out.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to being able to have that opportunity to celebrate John's life and for everybody to have that moment of closure. And kind of speaking on closure, I mean, now that you've been through all of this, now that you're kind of like you've got John's body, you've gotten a little bit of answers that's giving you a little bit more questions. Um, has this given you any sort of actual closure?
No.
How do you? I
Uh,
mean, like, and without me being like really cold hearted, I mean, how do you feel about all this? I mean, without you giving away any information that we can talk about in person when I see you, where's your head at?
I'm just angry. I'm just angry because this shouldn't be allowed to happen, right? I mean, but this has happened to so many people. Seth Rich, look at what's happening with Julian Assange. Seth Rich was just the first name that came to my mind, but we're talking about people who, right, who risk themselves to give information about the corruption that is happening, and so this is not something that's new that's happened, but it's just something that has affected me personally, you know, and it's always been wrong, and it's always sort of um you know, I always got very angry about these things, you know, like this is injustice, this shouldn't be happening. But now sitting here in this seat and it having happened to someone that I loved, it's just infuriating. It's infuriating that no one cares. It's infuriating that no one's talking about it. It's like this dirty secret that no one wants to talk about. You know, like no one cares. No one really wants to do interviews and hear what I have to say. You know, obviously I appreciate you allowing me to come on your show, but where are all the big, you know, the MSMs, you know what I'm saying? The mainstream media who were so quick to put out this false narrative that he committed suicide. Where are you now? You know?
Yeah.
And so obviously we know why they're not here answering the questions, but I'm really angry um and I don't think I'll ever have closure. Um, you know,
I
it's
mean,
just
it's understandable. I just kind of wanted to get where you're at with that because I wasn't sure if this was. It seemed based off the video that I saw on X that we shared earlier that there wasn't closure, and that's why I wanted to ask you.
no, there is no closure. There won't be. But once I'm able to share everything, I think I don't know that there would be closure, but at least everybody will know what I know. And what you do with that information, you know, that's up to them. But yeah, just mostly anger is what I feel and deep sorrow. Um,
I've seen a lot of a lot of negative. I mean, this is usually how Twitter X is. It's just a lot of negative trolling. I mean, you've had to make numerous posts, basically letting people know that these pictures that people were posting saying John was still alive, that they were older pictures, and people keep trying to keep this going, and then some people were trying to berate you for not getting the independent autopsy when it sounds like even if I was to like had the 30,000 euro to give to you, it wouldn't have changed anything. We wouldn't have gotten any new answers because to me it was without knowing any more information, but based off everything I've seen, because I've told you from the get-go, this has been the most bizarre criminal case I've ever seen, like where you're holding a body hostage for as long as was held. It was like almost 3 years, or was it over 3 years?
no, not quite 3 years.
Okay, it was
It would have been 3 years this June.
okay. So like two and a
Um,
half.
yeah.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I've talked to numerous people and they've never heard of anything like that.
No, it's insane. It's insane. There's no justification for it. You know,
I mean, I have a lot of questions for you about this, but I'm going to refrain and hold them for a future conversation.
I mean, you can ask your questions. It's no problem. I'm happy to answer. Um, it's been a crazy ride, but I guess when I mean I can only say this so many times, but I'll keep saying it until people understand. They performed CPR on him with a noose around his neck. That's why he's dead, because he was alive when they found him in the cell. He was breathing. He had a pulse. There's video of them performing CPR on him, doing the chest compressions with the bag over his mouth, pumping the air while he has a noose around his neck.
Is that video available?
You don't do this if you're trying to save someone's life. You just don't do that. Okay. And so with that information, everything else that happened makes complete sense. Refusing to give the autopsy report, keeping the body not storing the body properly for the first 6 months, keeping the body for over 2 years. For what? Right? All of these things make complete sense with that information. So, I mean, that's what I know, right? That's the information. So, So
this
that's where
video,
we are. So all of these things, when you put it in that light, obviously it makes perfect sense. It's clear what happened, you know. And so when people are sharing these old pictures and videos, it's infuriating to me, because I, of course, want him to have been still alive. And maybe that was the plan, for him to um, get out of prison. Of course, it probably was the plan. But that's not what happened. He's not going to go to these extremes to fake a death. Why? You know, why? Because I'm thinking of it this way. John knew me well enough to know that if I smell bullshit, I'm going to go and see where the source of it is. You know what I'm saying?
right? See where
And
the smell's
so
coming from.
all I'm smelling is bullshit, right?
Yeah,
And so if it was his plan to just, you know, fake his death and then get out of prison, obviously he would not do it in this sort of way, where I'm questioning things and I'm raising awareness, possibly putting him in danger if he actually had gotten away. But that's not what happened here, people. And so again, that's why it's so infuriating when people post these old pictures and they give these illusion that he's still alive. You know, these are old pictures. You know, if I saw something new, I would tell people. If I thought he was alive, I would say that. If I thought there was a chance, I would say that.
I mean, we've covered that in previous interviews where we even showed like one of the videos where people were trying to say that that was proof and you were in the video. So it's absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous.
the stupid Faraday cage. We were in the Faraday cage in 2019 in Spain. I was here with him. I was in
Yeah,
Spain with him. I left America with him, you know? And just because people don't see a lot of pictures of us together, that was by design, because I was the one taking the pictures, or I was the one taking the video. So, duh, you know, that doesn't mean I wasn't there.
right. No, I mean, we've been through this, and I'm frustrated with people with that. I mean, and I'm frustrated with people trying to like give you hell for how you took care of the arrangements for John. I mean, it didn't seem like even with this us trying to get signatures to raise awareness, but there wasn't as many signatures as I thought there should have been.
No one
That
cared.
was that was a
No one
travesty.
cared. And you know what? It was difficult for me as well. And it still is, because trying to raise this awareness while grieving, while dealing with all of the other things, that's no one should have to deal with that. Right? But I'm the only one here. Nobody's here with me. And so I can't do all the things. I can't be doing interviews and trying to get people to sign this and do all of this hustling and trying to get people's attention while I'm grieving. Like, no one should be expected to do all of that. So I did the best that I could, you know, and I dragged this out as long as, well, I won't say dragged it out, but I fought as hard as I could. You know, it's almost 3 years. What more could I have done? You know, I think what they gave me is evidence enough of what actually happened here, of the truth of what happened here. All of the things that they did, the refusal of letting me see his body, even still. What did it matter for them to let me see him at the funeral home? What would it matter after that long a time for me to see him? If I'm saying I'm okay with seeing him, I don't care how decomposed his body is, let me see him. Why are you still denying me that? You know?
Yeah.
And so all of these things, just again, when you look at it in light of them performing CPR on him with a noose around his neck, it all makes sense. It all makes sense.
Well, I mean, without, I'm not even going to ask a question, but I want to explore this again in the future. But I hope that based off of like that video and what information that you've accumulated, that you're looking into some sort of legal recourse, if that's even potentially possible. But
Um,
are you?
it's not possible for me. Maybe if his daughter wants to pursue it, she can, but it's not something that I want to do honestly. Um, but it's something, if she wants to do it, you know, I did all the heavy lifting, so she's welcome to. If she wants to pursue some sort of wrongful death or something, she's welcome to do that. But I think once I leave here, I'm done with Spain for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it. And one thing I do want to like stress is that, you know, through this, I guess 8 months into it, the investigation and their autopsy came to the conclusion that John committed suicide. And you, from the get go of that decision being made, have refused to accept that investigation or determination. And are they still refusing to release the official autopsy?
Yeah, that's done. That's over with. And it's not because I'm not just refusing to accept that just for the sake of refusing it. It's like they literally, it's in the report. There's pictures of his body still with the noose around his neck. They take the pictures after the body, after he was pronounced dead. So before that, they went into his cell after that and took the pictures. It's still around his neck. He has the noose around his neck. Until then, when you double back and you watch the video and you see that they're performing CPR on him, you realize they still have this around his neck because they didn't put it back on after they performed CPR. That would be stupid, right?
I mean, the whole thing is kind of stupid to me. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in our legal system, and it just shows that it's pretty much the same around the world. So, what's next? What's next for you? What's the next chapter for Janice McAfee? Are you going to continue with what you had talked about with trying to keep the legacy of John alive? Are you going to be involved with the John McAfee Foundation? Is that going to continue moving forward?
What's next? I just need to get out of Spain. I think I finally, I think once that happens, I think the sky's the limit. Because right now I feel like I'm in just this sort of weird holding pattern that is just attempted to suck the life out of me. And so getting back to America is what's next, which will happen sometime next month. Yes, I will be a part of the foundation. How that develops is up to our director, Philip. And so, but I will be a part of that and working to keep John's legacy alive. But honestly, my biggest focus on what's next is just going to be sharing this information because people need to know what happened, right? And I don't want people just taking my word for it that that they performed CPR on him with a noose around his neck. Obviously this information will be given to someone who can honestly do something with it, right? Investigate and share it with the world because the things that I'm doing is not getting anywhere, but people need to know what happened to John. And once they know, maybe then they'll care a little bit, and just care enough that this doesn't continue to happen, that we don't keep letting this happen. That when people, no matter who the messenger, I think that's a problem. I heard someone say this on Instagram or something, scrolling. You know how you do sort of that mindless scrolling when you just can't sleep or whatever. Anyways,
Yeah.
but they said we get so caught up in the messenger, and if it's not the right messenger, then we completely throw away the message. And the truth is the truth, no matter who's telling it, right? And so the truth that John shared was the truth, but because it was John sharing it, and because of all of the headlines of him being crazy and paranoid and drug addict, and he hangs out with prostitutes and this and that and that, people ignored the truth that he was telling, you know, and if we continue to do that, we're just slowly being marched to the slaughter. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what's happening. Like you can literally see the problems of the world, but people still are just so caught up in their labels of, okay, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat or I'm white or I'm black or I'm female, I'm a Christian, I'm this, I'm that. And it's like, okay, but let's open our eyes up to the truth, no matter who's telling us this truth. Because then we can do something about the injustice, about all of this corruption that's happening, you know? But until then, I mean, I don't know. So anyways, yeah,
Well,
that's
they
what
say
that's what I
truth is
want
the
to do.
first casualty in war. So and it, you know, I mean, like the attack on real journalism. Obviously, the mainstream media just kind of has a narrative, and if it doesn't fit in the narrative, it's not something that I feel like it's going to be covered. We've gotten away from
But we
like
still keep consuming it. Why do we keep consuming it? You know?
someone is. I'm not. I'm not.
Well,
So
I'm not either, but it's like how, but I mean, are there that still many people that are consuming the news in that way where it's like, okay, they're 100% telling me the truth and they have my best interests at heart. Like, is that still happening after COVID?
I mean, in America, if you look at the polls based off what they're saying with the presidential selection process, it looks like America is very divided. So it looks like we got half followers that listen to everything and half people that question everything. So I'd like to see one side, our side, the people who question things start to increase. And I think based off of what's happening in the world, the more and more this shit just keeps continuing to stack. Um, the intelligent people will question. So it's sad. Now, one good thing I wanted to ask you though, the videos and pictures that you mentioned, do you have this evidence in your possession?
I may or may not.
Okay, I'm just curious. And that's
Mhm.
something I would definitely like to explore more when you're outside of Spain. So I think this is a good way to wrap up
Mhm.
this kind of chapter in what's taking place.
Yeah.
I look forward to being able to eventually, I mean, I'm obviously not going to bug you. I want to give you time, to kind of get back into your groove here in the States, see your family and all that good stuff. But I do would like to see you and do an in-person interview if you're interested and expound upon some of the things that you don't feel comfortable talking about
Yeah, of course.
right now,
Of
based
course.
off
Yeah.
of your location.
Yeah, it's just right now. And I wish I felt differently about that, but I just
No,
want
I
to stay
respect
safe.
it.
I just
I
want to stay
respect
safe, you know? I had some close calls soon after John died, and so I just want to stay safe. And I'll be back next month um, in America. Wow, it's so crazy that it's actually happening. I've been here for what seems like an eternity. I'm so looking forward to seeing my children who are just beautifully amazing, and I'm happy to be able to, I don't know, to just be back on my home turf, honestly, because things were, yeah, things will be much different when I'm
Right.
home. Yeah, much
No, I
different.
get it. I totally get it. I mean, based off of like our conversations over the past few years, I mean, there's been situations where I've been extremely worried about you. Sometimes where you would even just go dark and not communicate back. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I can't wait for you to get out of Spain personally.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's why I said to you one of the first things I've been, are you still in Spain? Like, what are you doing there still? You
yeah.
explained why, and it makes complete sense, and we don't have to go into that. But anytime you want to come on the show, you're always more than welcome, Janice. I appreciate you. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to add before we wrap up this conversation today?
Um, when I get back to America, it's on. No, I'm just kidding.
It's on. It's on. No, I get it though. No, I get it because then you can truly speak your mind and not hold back. Obviously, I think with what you posted on Twitter, you've left a lot to be said, and I just look forward to that information coming out.
Yeah, because then the internet sleuths can do what they do and follow the money. I'm assuming that a great deal of money would have been paid out for this to be able to have happened. Anyways, there's just a lot of things. So yeah, of course, when I get back to America, it is on. But
Well,
more
let's.
importantly, I'm happy that I'm leaving here. And usually I try to end this with what John used to say, which is do what you love. But I think I want to say, please wake up. Like, please just take a step back from what you think you know about this world, from what you think you know about the world around you, um, in your community and in your state, in your country. just take a step back and be willing to look at information with a new set of eyes, right? Not with your labels, whatever your label is, whatever you identify as, drop all of that and just look at the truth of the world as it is. Because I think once we do that, then maybe we may have a fighting chance, right? And we can maybe keep this totalitarian system that's trying to swallow us whole. Maybe we can keep that at bay for a little longer, and leave the world in a better place for our children. Because at the end of the day, what else are we doing here? If we're not leaving it better for the next generation. So that's what I want to say.
Well said. Well said. Well, again, Janice, I appreciate you as always. Bear with me 1 second while I do the wrap up. And ladies and gentlemen, going to have links for everything we screen shared. Going to have links for all the previous conversations with Janice and John. So I encourage you to check those out if you have not already. And make sure you're subscribed here. Before we wrap things up, I encourage you, as always, to be a blessing to others. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the glitch that you want to see in this matrix. Be the change that you want to see in this world. And until next time, practice change. Don't forget to visit ricetvx.com, where you can watch both of my YouTube channels, Rice Crypto and Rice Against the Grain, directly. Find all of my social media links, sign up for my mailing list, and become a member of Rice Uncensored, where you can join me on the private side for less than $0.25 a day. You will get early access to both Rice Crypto and Rice Against the Grain, ad-free, unedited videos, exclusive content, members-only forum with direct access to me, live streams, and more to come, only at ricetvx.com.